Your engagement, the involvement of more than 4 million PTA members across the country makes our schools stronger. And I know the impact that parents can have in schools. Like my boss, I started my career as an organizer, and I see that as the essence of what you do. I've been in Washington now for 30 years. I've raised my kids here, put my kids through the schools here, and I've been witness to all kinds of changes, including moving from a time when students with names like mine had over a 30% dropout rate. The Latino dropout rate when I first got to Washington was well north of 30%. And in the schools that my children attended, I watched transformation happen during the time that they were there, thanks to the fact that we were collecting data which told us what was happening not just across the whole school, but also among subgroups within the school. And that helped parents begin to see that the Latino students were falling behind, the African American students were falling behind, students with disabilities were falling behind. And as a result, I watched my neighbors, the parents involved in the school system, engage in making sure that we were doing the work of ensuring that every single child was successful, that we were providing for the needs of every single kid in that school system. And that is exactly how it's done. And that's how, together, we have achieved some important things, like making sure nearly every state has embraced college and career-ready standards for teaching and learning. That's how we achieve the highest high school graduation rate on record. We've cut the dropout rate by nearly 1/3. The Latino high school dropout rate has been cut by more than half. It was near 30% when I got to this town. It's under 12 now. And the number of, you can applaud for that. And the number of high schools where 40% or more of the students fail to graduate on time has been cut in half, from more than 2,000 schools to just over 1,000 high schools. So a lot more work to do, but that is tremendous progress. More than 30 states have increased their investments in early childhood education by more than $1.5 billion, that's billion with a B, since this president called for universal preschool. And there are 1 million more African American and Latino students attending college than there were at the start of this administration. We did that together. So teachers, principals, school administrators are some of the most dedicated and courageous and heroic people that I know. But I also know they can't do it alone. The changes that we're trying to make cannot happen without parents being engaged. So thank you. I'm really so honored to be with all of you today. So in the last 7 years that we've been here and in the remaining 10 months that we will be here, this president and his administration are very focused on advancing a vision to improve opportunities and outcomes in education across the continuum. And by the continuum, we really mean from birth through higher education. This begins by raising expectations for teachers and learning at every level, by investing in developing and supporting great teachers, by spurring innovation in our classrooms. You guys have been there every step of the way. So we've charted a course towards expanding high quality early education, which is, I know, something you've been focused on too. When we were in the epic economic downturn and we passed the Recovery Act, we saved or created over 400,000 jobs, mostly in education. Those are teachers and principals' jobs, librarians and counselors as well. And thanks to the reforms that we've put in place, we have higher academic standards in place, aligned towards college and career readiness all across the country. Our school improvement grants have played a tremendously important role in cutting the number of dropout factories in half. And since the president launched his Connect Ed initiative in 2013, we've set our sights on the goal of high-speed connectivity for every American classroom. And I want to put a pin in that. By every American classroom, we mean not just every single classroom, but every single seat in every single classroom. That's the goal here for connectivity. And we've already succeeded in cutting the digital divide in our schools in half. 20 million more students now have access to high-speed internet that they need to utilize the modern digital learning tools, the tools that are really transforming teaching and learning in this country. And many of those students are in low-income communities. And of course, the passage of the Every Student Succeeds Act is a big deal. And it would have been impossible without the leadership and the advocacy of the PTA. This is an incredibly important development. So we collectively embrace the goal of higher college and career-ready standards for all students. This law includes many of the changes that our administration and many of you have long supported. There's a new federal-state partnership that's created under this law, and it will ensure that our schools are held accountable for the success of every student, spur innovation in education, encourage states to review and reduce duplicative or unnecessary testing, and further expand access to high-quality preschool. So this law is not perfect. It's not everything that everybody would have wanted, but it's a very strong development, in part because of the voices of parents in this room and people like you all around the country who fought alongside the president for the principles of, especially of accountability. That is tremendously important. And it also means that we have tremendously important work in front of us to do. So this administration is going to do everything it can. In fact, I came flying here from a meeting with the Acting Secretary of Education, John King, working through our plans for implementation of this law in the final 10 months of the administration. Our job is to build on the progress we've made and improve access to opportunity for all of our students. The federal government has a very important role to play here, and we intend to play it. We intend to do our part. But many of the big decisions still to be made are going to be made at the state level. We will need your engagement more than ever to make sure that we're successful in leveraging the tools of this new law to make sure that every student really does succeed. It is not a foregone conclusion that we will get there. We've put the framework in place. The framework is words on paper. What makes it real is the work that you do in your communities every single day. So we need you, and we're so grateful for the partnership with you in making this happen. But before I conclude, I want to spend a minute on something that is, it's very much on my mind. It's very much on the mind of the president, and I suspect it's very much on the minds of parents all around the country, and that is the overuse of standardized testing in so many of our schools. So the president receives 10 letters a day from Americans all across the country. He gets many more letters than that, but 10 letters a day are selected by our correspondence office to put in a folder for him. He reads 10 letters a day from people around the country. And trust me, he really reads them because he follows up with his policy team about those letters. And so believe me when I tell you, I know about the letters that he gets. And a concern he hears over and over again comes from parents who are worried that testing is taking the joy out of learning and increasing the pressure on teachers and increasing the pressure on their kids. Which is right? I guess you agree with that. So the president has pushed his team really hard on this issue. He cares about it enormously, and that is why in October he announced what we're calling the President's Testing Action Plan to ensure that the assessments that happen in our schools are assessments that are worth taking, that they're high quality, that are time limited, and that we get rid of duplicative tests, that we get rid of unnecessary tests. He's asked my team in the Department of Education to push very hard on this, to do everything we can to reduce the burden of unnecessary testing and make sure that when we are assessing our students, we make it count. So I'm proud to report that we've taken some important steps in implementing this plan in the first few months since he announced it. One of those is passing the Every Student Succeeds Act because it contains important provisions to help states reduce the burden of overtesting on their schools and on their students. And Acting Secretary King sent a letter to states earlier this year outlining how they can use the existing federal funding to identify and eliminate low-quality tests and redundant tests, while at the same time ensuring that educators and parents have the information that all of us need to make sure that our students are making progress the way that they should be making progress. Our job is to improve learning, but we can do it with much less testing than we're using. The president's budget also contains a request for additional resources for states to conduct audits of their assessments and eliminate unhelpful tests, and new resources to help states improve the assessments that they are going to use. So even as we look to cut tests to the bare minimum, the president knows, as well as you do, that we have to have assessment systems that measure how well our students are doing year to year as the new law requires, and that those systems need to provide the information that allow teachers to target supports to students that need them the most, and to shine a light on achievement gaps that exist between students so that we're doing the same thing that I saw happen in my own children's school system, that we know where the gaps are, because unless we know where the gaps are, we can't hope to close them. So I want to, in particular, single out Nathan for his leadership and to applaud all of you for the position statement that the PTA's Board of Directors released on assessments, which recognizes the need for high-quality assessments while ensuring that we are not wasting students' or teachers' time with low-quality or redundant tests. In the statement, the PTA recognized something really important, and that is that we need everybody participating. We need parents and students and teachers all engaged in this process. We need to be at the table to make sure that we improve assessments, that we eliminate those aren't useful to educators and families. That's how leadership works. And you all demonstrated that leadership, and that is an incredibly important contribution to this debate that we're having and to the work that we need to do. So the President has asked us to continue to make this goal and all of the goals of the Testing Action Plan a priority in the time that we're here, and to really lock it in so that the work that we're doing extends beyond our presence in office. And that's exactly what the Department of Education and the President's domestic policy team intend to do. So what drives the President, not just as a leader, but also as a father, is making sure that every single one of our kids have the same chance that this country gave him and gave the First Lady. His entire domestic agenda is focused on opportunity, and it's built on the premise that made this country great, that if you work hard, you live up to your responsibilities, that you can get ahead in America. And I take this incredibly seriously. I'm the daughter of immigrants who came to this country in part because of our educational system, and the fact that I can be standing here representing the President of the United States is because the American dream was real for my immigrant parents, and education was available to me and to my siblings. That is the American story over and over and over again, but I have learned through hard experience that we have to fight to make sure that that is real for every American, that that is not something we can ever take for granted. It is a commitment that we must work on and renew and struggle to achieve over and over again. And that's why I want to both thank you for your commitment to that work, and in particular to ask you to really, really be focused and engaged as we implement this new law. We need robust engagement, especially from the kind of leadership that's reflected in this room, to make sure that schools, districts, and states are putting in place the right plans to support the growth and achievement of all learners, including and especially those that are hardest to serve. I also have been in this work long enough to remember a time when students with names like mine were not included in assessment systems altogether because the assumption was that we couldn't do it. And I have over and over again encountered folks, good people, well-meaning people, who, when, again, referring just to my own community, to people with names like mine in school systems, well-meaning people who were trying to do the right thing, but who, when they were describing kids like my kids, or kids like immigrant kids, or the refugee kids that we are welcoming into our communities, the word that got used in one memorable occasion with a member of the US Senate, the word that he used was burden. It's pretty hard to communicate that you expect kids to be able to learn that you believe that they can if that's your starting point. And you certainly can't communicate to those children themselves that you know they can succeed if that's where you start. You in this room are in a better position than just about anybody in the country to make sure this doesn't happen. And what I love about what I saw just in the PTA, in my own experience as a parent, but also as a student, is that the people who sign up and show up are doing it not just for their kids, they're doing it for all kids. Yeah, thank you for that. So when the President signed this new act into law, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, he was counting on all of you, right? We have a new federal-state partnership, and a lot of where the rubber is going to meet the road is in the states and in the districts. And you are the eyes and the ears and the hearts and the hands who will make sure that we get this right. We are so grateful for your partnership. We're so grateful for your leadership. We have a lot to do. And really, it's not an exaggeration to say that our collective fate, our future, our ability to compete economically, and the most important thing that we have, the most important asset that we have, which is the capacities of our children, are very much on your shoulders as you do this work. Thank you for taking that on. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the work that we will do together. And thank you especially for the work that's ahead of us. Thank you all. God bless you.